Alright, so this particular problem asks us to simplify using the properties of exponents. So in this case, we're doing nothing but using properties of exponents, nothing with radicals going on here, even though that's what a rational exponent means. Now, in terms of a multiple choice test, the strategy that I would use on a problem such as this one is to try to filter out the fluff. There's a lot going on here. We have numbers, x's, y's, and z's. That's a lot going on in this problem. So what I would do to filter out the fluff is I would try to identify over my multiple choice options which of those four things that I just mentioned are different in all four multiple choice options. So those things I mentioned were the number portion, the x's, the y's, and the z's. So as far as the numbers, I see a 2 in the bottom, I see -8/3, I see a 3 in the bottom, and I see a 2 in the bottom. So the fact that A and D both have a 2 in the bottom tells me, oh, it looks like the numbers aren't different. They're not differentiated between all four multiple choice options. So let's look at the x's. We have an x in the bottom, we have an x in the top, we have an x cubed in the bottom. Oh, but it looks like we have another x cubed in the bottom. So the fact that C and D both have an x cubed in the bottom says we're not differentiating in the x's. Let's look at the y's. The y's have a y cubed in the top, a y cubed in the bottom, oh, a y cubed in the top, and a y cubed in the top. So it looks like, in this case, all three of those, A, C, and D, have kind of the same thing going on. And so let's look at the z's. The z's have a z squared in the bottom. They have a z squared in the top. They have a z to the 6th in the bottom. And they have a z to the 4/3, oops, in the bottom actually, sorry. Let me rewrite that. So it looks like all four multiple choice options are different when they come to the z's. So what that tells me about this problem is that I could probably ignore everything else in this problem and just look at this and say, let's ignore the numbers, let's ignore the x's, let's ignore the y's. If I just look at the z's only, then I should be able to differentiate between A, B, C, and D. So the first thing I need to do is look inside that parenthesis and realize that when I have z to a power over z to a power, I subtract the powers. So I'm subtracting 5 minus -1, which is 5 plus 1, or 6. So inside the parentheses, I have z to the 6th raised to the -1/3 power. When I have a power raised to a power, I multiply those. So that gets me z to the -2, which means 1 over z squared. So if I look back at my multiple choice options, B is the right answer. Oh, I lied. A. I circled the wrong one. Can't follow my own writing. A is the right answer. That has the z squared on the bottom. That's what I was looking for. Now, my personal suggestion to you, if you use this suggestion of mine to focus in on one aspect of the problem, like in this one, and say, let me just figure out what the answer needs to be on that. The downside of this method is that you're putting all your eggs in one basket. If you made a mistake with your z's, you are now wrong. Whereas you may have caught it had you did the whole problem. So my suggestion to you, if you use this method, is to come back later and do the numbers, do the x's, do the y's to check your work. Because I've mentioned earlier in these reviews that we want to have different approaches for checking our work. If you just look over your work, it's kind of like proofreading your own English paper. You're going to read right over the errors because you know what it's supposed to say. Same thing happens in math. So if we can approach this in a different way and just kind of get our mind fresh from the problem, come back to this and say, let me just look at the numbers. Let me do 16 over 2 is 8. 8 to the negative 1/3 power means to take the cube root and then flip it. So put it on the bottom. Sure enough, our right answer does have 2 on the bottom. So we can verify our answer that way by returning to the numbers in the x's and the y's. And that way you eventually do the whole problem. You just try to be as quick and efficient as possible on your first run through. So along those lines, I always got to ask this question. How many bonus points do you get for turning your final exam in early? The correct answer is 0. There's no bonus for being the first one done. There's no bonus for having remaining time at the end. Use all of your time. This test is a huge chunk of your final grade. Take your time to review your answers, double check them as many ways as you can to be sure that your answers are correct.